Hello, everybody, and welcome to a bit of bonus content from StatCheck. We are here to have a brief discussion of the new Guard FAQ, which finally dropped today, only approximately 6 months after the book was launched to the public. It feels like it's been that long. It was January?
4.5 weeks since the book came out. So
Was it
pretty
only been
close.
4.5 weeks? But no, because
Yeah.
we got the box in December.
Yeah, we
right?
got the box back in November, I think it
November,
was.
so 5 months since this book not getting an FAQ.
Yeah.
So you could say it's a little past due. We're a little sick of not knowing how any of this stuff works. So what we're going to do, we're just going to broadly run point by point through the updates and errata section and also the FAQ section of the Guard FAQ, which published the Warhammer community today. And then we'll give our general thoughts on it. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about what's not here, what we'd like to have seen, and implications thereof. So yeah, we'll be here 50 minutes or so, and then we'll let you get away. So let's start with the easy one. Cadian Shock Troops and Death Corps of Krieg both can now only select the same special weapon once per squad instead of before. I think you could do like 2 plasma guns in the Cadian squad, and now it's like 1 plasma, 1 melta you get stuck with.
That's correct, and that's not too surprising. The new Cadian sprue had 1 melta gun and 1 plasma gun on it, and GW has very much been enforcing for most books.
Not Space Marines.
Like what? Yeah, Marines are the exception. We always know that, but like for other books, what's in the box is what you can build.
Yeah, so I don't think this is a huge deal. It makes your command squad, your Cadian squad's a little less focused. We usually see double plasma gun, I think. You'll now have a plasma and a melta, and you'll move on with your life, and it won't be too big a deal.
Yeah, they died as soon as they popped their heads out anyways, and really half the time you were wasting time rolling those plasma shots.
Okay, next we saw a small change to the Sentinel's Militarum Plasma Cannon, which are, I guess this is also the ones on the Russ sponsons, but people that they split in squads, where now the mortal wounds apply to the unit, not the model. This just cleans up some weird interactions where you could technically have multiple wounded models, but the core rules really don't like that. So this being cleaned up is just nice bookkeeping. This is the sort of stuff FAQs are for. It'd be good if they caught this, because this has been like 4 or 5 books have had this now. I think the Shock
We've been making this
does,
mistake since 8th edition on with Dark Technomancers on Drukhari.
Yeah, Shock Drum Drags does were a recent example of this, where they just had their own wording. Next, we have the Valkyrie gaining airborne, which means that it's actually a flyer now as opposed to a fast skimmer, which is what it would have been in their 5th edition nomenclature, which is definitely a relevant reference nowadays. The main one with this one is that when it hovers, it doesn't lose airborne. So technically, the Harpy can hover, and it still can't charge, and it still can't be punched. So cool. That'll need an FAQ to the FAQ, as is very standard for GW. But I don't think I've seen a Valkyrie on the table. I have no idea what they do.
They're overpriced transports.
I'm pretty sure Anthony, when he got the codex, he flicked to the back of the guard book and looked at the Valkyrie data sheet. The first thing he did and was like, "Oh, thank goodness they're not broken." So, long may that continue. There's an update to the Aegis defense line. I don't know what it did before. Do you have any context on this one?
They changed it from being an area terrain feature to an obstacle. Because when it was an area terrain, it didn't make any sense, because you had basically the little tiny enclosed bunker or like trench part of it, and that would be the only part that actually had any effect, or if you were standing on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now it's an obstacle, which means you can fight through it as well. A few other,
and it means that you get the area terrain, or not the area terrain, but the light cover benefit sitting behind it within 3 inches, being shot over, all of that jazz.
Yeah. So broadly a good change, but it does mean that if you were on the terrain, like the little bunker bit, basically, you got the cover even if they were somebody within range of it. Now, if they fly up to it, they can shoot over it without taking the penalty, right? Because if they're within range of it, they would ignore it as an obstacle. So it works like you would expect a defense line to now, where if they get close enough, it turns off, which is probably a slight nerf, but who really cares?
You weren't really seeing very many of them. I mean, the new unit, as far as I know, is still unreleased. And there's a lot of questions about what people are supposed to be running for now, and I actually have not seen it in a single guard list up until this point.
No, me neither. There was a lot of hype for when the book dropped, but it doesn't.
I don't think it's worth it.
No, I mean, even with new Arcs of Women detachments, it feels like it would be okay. If I was playing a different kind of cults list, I would quite like to add that one in,
but you can't.
You can't. Because it goes to an allied slot now. Oh, it's so sad. That was the only cool thing you could do with Brew Brothers.
Yep, and because it has the Astro Militarum keyword, you can't just use it as your generic fortification for GSC.
Shambles. Next, we see the Tempestus Scions. The Tempestus Scions Tempestor, so the Sergeant's hotshot las pistol, can now be replaced with a bolt pistol and plasma gun. I'm guessing there was another option here or an option missing
We're
before.
just fixing it to again be what you can actually take from the box.
Yeah, it was really weird that I could have a grab cannon, but
Option. It really does nothing.
no, I have no idea what the previous one was. I assume this guy just gets a plasma pistol because it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that is it for the general updates in errata. Is there anything that needed an update or errata here that didn't hit it in? I would say that the overcharged plasma cells was the one that, or as overcharged fuel cells, the Kazakh stratagem was the one that's missing here. That we would have expected to see for updates.
Definitely needs an errata. Well, maybe they feel it's perfectly fine the way it is, but no, it's not.
They're wrong. So we'll talk about that a bit later, but that's the one that's really missing is for most of these stratagems where it's like if you roll 16 wounds, you deal a mortal wound, they are capped at 6 total rather than 6 per target. So you could see, for example, the Mars one for Fury of Mars for AdMech, which is 6 per total for the unit shooting, not 6 per target. Kazakin are significantly better at applying mortal wounds than a squad of anything in Adeptus Mechanicus is, and also are uncapped and can do it to as many targets as they have shots. So it's a little bit different. It's broadly the best stratagem in the game, I think, is something in that region.
Yeah, 1 CP and you can theoretically put out 18 mortal wounds.
Yeah, it's like 15 is average, right? So
yeah. Oh, realistically, you're spending 2 CP because you want to get the auto 5s, but that's about it.
It's an absurd stratagem that just shouldn't exist in the game in the capacity it does. Unfortunately, it does, and it will continue to. I think the reasonable reason this hasn't changed is because it's a balanced data slate change that they're going to make, and we're expecting that in April, so somewhere between 30 to 60 months, 30 to 60 weeks, 60 days even from now, we should see a balanced data slate. But there's a lot of events between now and then, a lot of games being played with Guard where this is still a thing.
And one of the big problems, we're talking about it now, but one of the big problems is that before the FAQ dropped, everyone was like, there was a lot of house rulings on it, where it was just like capped to 6 per activation. Now that they've come out with this and they've left it out, the rules as intended now applies as well as rules as written.
Yeah, but before we had at least a reasonable justification with it being no FAQ, no play, that you could say we're going to house rule this. And now that there is an FAQ, and we're technically just playing it now, that you can't really say anything about that specifically.
And in fact, that's exactly what the WTC has said when they've been asked about it by multiple people. They said, for all intents and purposes, it appears that this is the intended function of the stratagem, so we're going to let it ride as is. And I've now done that for my local events and basically said, have fun, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm just going to ban Guard players. That'll be much easier. Okay, now moving on to the FAQs. The first one we have seen is that when an officer now disembarks from a Chimera, they have been confirmed as they get to do their one-off order while they're inside the Chimera, and then they get to do their normal number of orders when they disembark as well, which does mean that if you are in a Chimera, you would technically get one additional order. So, for example, the example given is Strachan could do one order inside it and then disembark and do 2 more. But he doesn't benefit from regimental tactics on, I believe, is it just the ones when he gets out, or does the one in the Chimera not apply the bubble as well?
I think it's the one in the Chimera that doesn't benefit from regimental tactics.
No, the disembarking rule said I definitely know that one, like when you disembark, you don't get it at all. I'm gonna have a quick look it up while we're
that's what I'm doing right now
because it's kind of important. But broadly here, you're looking at you can do a few more orders with a Guard character inside a Chimera. So if you're running if your 10 Kazakin have just disembarked from your mechanized Chimera and you want to do something with it, getting a tank inside it so that you can bubble out, you can do a third order is not the worst idea in the world. It's definitely a thing you have access to. If you're playing a Chimera spam list, you'll have an extra order available.
Yeah, so the disembarking, it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
And then for Chimeras, where the hell is the dedicated transports? This thing is too long. There it is.
It's under troops.
Yeah, they moved it. And then the mobile.
Yeah, so you get 1 order which does apply regimental tactics, and 2 that don't, or 1 additional that doesn't. If you have 1 order anyway. So it's kind of nice. It's a neat change. I don't think Chimeras are broadly being used for this, and it gives them a bit more of a use case. If you want to get an additional order a little bit further away, you can get out, chuck an order somewhere. I think it's fine. It's odd, that you can do an extra order. Creed inside this would technically get 4 orders.
Yeah.
So she could apply that strength buff to 4 units at that point, but you're not bubbling them out for the 3 that she gets for disembarking. So I don't think it's going to break the game in any way, shape, or form. It's an interesting use case for an okay transport.
Yeah, it's like it combos quite nicely with mechanized Kazakins.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can get the Kazakin out and then get the officer out and still give a couple of orders and not feel bad about it. But then you would have to run like a 9 of Kazakin, which I think loses them a special weapon.
No, because if I remember correctly, they upped them to 12 on Chimeras.
Oh, okay, even better. Why is every vehicle except Rhinos and drop pods 12? I hate it so much. They were 12 in 5th edition GW. Give me back my 12-seat drop pods. I know the models
I'll take
only got
11
10
seats even.
I'll take 11, yeah. Just let me put an ancient in with them so that they can all fire on death.
Oh god.
I was strat reserving that guy at the tournament. It was okay. Extremely mediocre. So I would
All
describe
right,
it.
what are we looking at next?
We are then, speaking of Creed, perfect segue there. Creed is now confirmed as only the specific order that triggers Lord Castellan's Fury, which is the +1 strength when you're issued an order by Creed as the direct target, not with the regimental tactics order spill. You gain +1 strength to your ranged attacks. That is now confirmed to only apply to that specific order, to that specific unit, and only applies while that order is in effect. So if you overwrite that order with a future one, so the previous combo was doing things like you could order like stand vigil and fix bayonets to 2 separate mortar teams, which would apply the strength buff and also a useless order. And then you would pick then the third one you would apply take aim to, and then you would choose to use the bubble effect for regimental tactics to apply to the other 2, which would overwrite their orders with take aim, giving them all 3 +1 strength, +1 AP, and +1 to hit. Now you'll have to choose. So you can either have all 3 with +1 to hit and +1 AP, or you can have all 3 with +1 strength. And then in both situations, one will have both buffs, but that's the most you can get now. If you want to have them, like you can't have 2 and 2, you can have 3 and 1 or 1 and 3.
The other thing
you
that this also addresses is the
stack.
stacking.
Yeah. So we did see previously things like the Rapier quad mortar batteries, or I think they're just called quad mortars in Guard, which are like 46 shots at 501, would get 3 instances of an order from Creed, stacking their strength up to +8 or +3 to a total of 8. And it turns out most armies don't like 12d6 strength 8 indirect shots coming at them. I don't know what could possibly have made anybody think that was a completely reasonable interpretation of the rules, but wild things happen in some of the fringer metas in this game, and it's sometimes best just not to think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think broadly it's a good change.
Yeah, and really it just cleaned up that interaction that needed to be FAQ.
But that's definitely an errata, not an FAQ. So
yeah,
because it definitely did work the other way before. So
yeah,
it's good that they confirmed that. Next, we have the Trophy Hunters Regiment trait, which is the one where it's an all-consuming trait, so it takes up both of your successor traits, and it gives you +1 to strength when you're targeting a monster vehicle. And they confirmed that if you're playing like a unit of Kazakin or you take the Veteran Commander Tank Case, which gives you an additional trait, you can still take it even though you have another regimental doctrine, which was just a little wording artifact that was a little awkward. I don't think this has probably changed anything. It's not one of the
it was
most
clear
popular ones
before,
anyway.
or at least it was fairly clear because it said if you select this, you cannot select any others. But because you aren't selecting any others for the Kazakin, it's perfectly fine. The only place where that would actually interfere would be Crusade.
I guess if you were already playing a successor trait, like if you were playing, like you had already picked 2 and then you picked a third, you would be selecting 3 at that point. So if you had like successor Kazakin, maybe it was an issue.
No, it still works because you don't select for the Kazakin the first 2. You select that for your army.
Yeah, that's fair. But it's just kind of like I could see the vagueness of the wording being a little bit.
Yeah, so it's good that they clarified it.
Yeah.
Crusade still breaks it, but Crusade is weird
Good
because
stuff.
you can throw like a third regimental tactic on there.
Oh, good. I'm sure Nathan's doing that in some sense. Next, we have if you use the field promotion strategy to select the same warlord trait as the warlord that was just destroyed had, or can you use it to select the same warlord trait that the previously destroyed one had? So, for example, if you lost Leontis, could you use this to give the new that you gave the new warlord trait to? Could you give them grand strategies as well for the regen? And the answer is no. So once you've picked the warlord trait, that's it. You can't pick it again. I think that's precedented with other things like Shoulder the Mantle for Custodes. I think has the same wording where once you've had a warlord trait, once you can't have it again.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can't use it multiple times.
It was definitely the same with like the Leviathan supplement for Tyranids in the early 9th edition. So again, this is just a clarification thing. It's nice that they've confirmed it, but I don't think this is changing anybody's game plan. The one that might, in a little sense, is they have also clarified for that stratagem that when you use that stratagem to select a world trait, if you pick old grudges, you do not get to pick a new unit to gain the benefit from, which is the +1 to wound when targeting them, because that is only the trigger for old grudges is at the start of the first battle round. You're well past that at this point. And personally, I think this makes a lot of thematic sense because you've just gained a field promotion and you have a new old grudge. It's not how old grudges work. It's got only Votan get new grudges during the game. And I think that's a very thematically appropriate for the Imperium. But yeah, broadly, I don't think anybody was really doing this for that. It was just a really expensive way to have a bad version of a +1 to wound stratagem.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess if you suddenly had anger in your lines and you'd run out of stuff to kill him with, this was a way to get your guardsmen winning him on 5s. I guess. But yeah, that's it for the FAQs. There's nothing that's really missing from the FAQ section. I guess the only one that we would say is questionable is how Inflexible Command, which is one of the guard secondaries, interacts with being in a transport. So the way Inflexible Command works, being dead as well, or if you don't have any officers left. Broadly, the issue here is that there is not really a lot of clarity on if your units are inside transports, whether they count as being on the board and are included in the criteria for this. So if you've got Kazakin inside a Chimera, and not all of your infantry are within 6 or 12 of an officer, or if they're off the board, for example, in reserve, not all of them are there.
Part of the issue is that they use the old wording in Nephilim. Inflexible Command and Boots on the Ground was there, and it required an FAQ because originally Nephilim stated that it was that it had the same wording as what ARCS has, which is just all of your infantry units are within X range of an officer, and all of your platoon units or all of your vehicle units are within X range of a vehicle officer. They FAQ'd it to be on the battlefield. And then when Omens came out, they used the updated wording for platoon and regimental, or platoon and squadron. That's the one, and just within range of an officer. But they didn't update the wording to include the on the battlefield key. So technically, right now, if you wanted to be a real jackass, you could play a guard player and say, "I've killed an infantry squad. You're not scoring Inflexible on them for the rest of the game."
Personally, I think you should absolutely do that to any Guard 2 player who tries to target multiple things with Kazarkin. I think that's just a fair and balanced way to approach it.
Yeah, tick for tat.
Exactly. You should also go for their knees with a monkey wrench, but whatever. We're not advocating violence here, stat check.
No.
Definitely, monkey wrenches are like those squishy ones that you get at the fun fair, right? Like the like the inflatable ones. That's what a monkey wrench is, right? Hit them with one of those. But so the main thing with that Inflexible Command one is we're expecting that to be in the Arts of Omen FAQ. I think the weird thing is that didn't drop today as well, because the Arts of Omen already has an FAQ. Adding an update for guard validity would have been a good way to clean that up. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that, despite the book being 5 months old. For guard, this is it's an interesting choice.
Well, especially since they already recognized the issue and fixed it in Nephilim, so the same fix should just apply to ARCs.
Yeah. So that's it for the Guard FAQ breakdown. On a scale of like 1 to 10, this is like a 4. It fixes some things that kind of needed clarity, some things that were kind of obvious, and misses out on some really big ones for me. I really think that there should have been a change to the finial in here. And honestly, I personally think that they should have doing like Admech Drakari level FAQ where they were adding points changes at this stage, but the stats.
The reality is that. Yeah, the stats right now show that they're sitting at a 51% win rate. Even Born Soldiers is sitting at like a 53% win rate. And they are like right on the 1.0 for overrep.
Yep.
Their player population has exploded. So there is something to be said for bad players dragging the win rate down. But again, when you just look at stats wholesale, you can't say, like, we can look at the book and say there's an issue here. But GW has to look at the actual numbers and say, well, there's no perceived issue.
Or no, there's only a perceived issue.
Sorry, yes, only a perceived issue.
Which is insane because everybody that I speak to is like, Guard is the best book in the game, and everybody looks at the stats and is like, yeah, but they're not winning much.
No.
They definitely have bad matchups, but their presence in the game is problematic. And I look forward to seeing if anything changes or if Nas will get the buffs he wants.
Please,
because somehow this book will be bad enough that it'll get buffed and we'll have a thick city level Drakari problem on our hands. That's what I'm feeling.
Please,
Or
no.
we'll get compensation nerfs. Kazakin will get to go down, and then like something absurd will go, or Kazakin will go up, and something absurd will go down like 50%, and we'll be playing against like 70-point basilisks or something. I can feel it coming.
Please, no.
At any rate, that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for being with us for this super short bonus content. Thank you, Jeremy, for agreeing to jump on from catching the wife aggro on the way here. And we will hopefully, the goal is to try and do these whenever there's a reasonably impactful FAQ or anything like that. So we will be doing our best to try and keep up with these. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you, and we will see you later.
Cheers.